folks, sad to say this is episode 2 of the chipper saga. I got the new recoil starter on, which was, no big deal, but this thing still won't start now. And it's really hard to pull, and I couldn't figure out why. So, looking around inside, I'm going to have to take this apart so you can see it, but the J-hammers are rubbing. Yeah, there's no way I can show you. But there's J-hammers on basically this side of the chipper that are rubbing into the metal now. And I noticed that this axle is disappearing into the bearing. And, I see right here there's 2 set screws, it looks like, that are supposed to be there that are not. So, I got to take off this belt guard on this side, see what's going on in the bearing. But basically that's what's happening. And this is actually the root of all of these problems I've been having, I'm sure. Because as this thing slips in, the grinders are now in contact with the side of the case. And that's what made it hard to pull, and that's how the rope broke. So even though I spent all this time, and they passed the buck over to Briggs & Stratton over there at DR Chippers, it actually turned out it was their fault because somebody didn't tighten something up enough. So I'm going to drag this thing all the way up to the workshop so I can take it apart and clean it up and have a look inside. But yeah, so my experience with DR is still not stellar. I suppose I could call them up and get a warranty repair, but I mean, realistically, this I think is going to be a pretty easy thing to fix. I can tell right now that shaft has slid into the bearing. So yeah, and like I said, there's a threaded hole here, and there's a threaded hole here. I bet you there should be some sort of a grub screw in that or something. Hold this in, wouldn't you think? Well, hopefully there's some on the inside. We'll see after we get in the shop and take it apart. I drag this sucker all the way across the yard, bring it back in the workshop so I can get to it. But here's the J-hammer I was talking about, and look how much that's gouging into the metal. This mechanism barely wants to turn because it is so jammed up. I can barely rotate it by hand. You can see there's a huge space here. That probably explains why this thing's been getting jammed so often, because the space is so large that the sticks can stick in here. So they come down this chute. They're supposed to hit the cutter and get cut, but instead they're flipping sideways and getting jammed in there. So, and that's a problem I've been having since day one with this machine. And my guess is that's because this whole axle has been floating. The main axle has been floating back and forth. So again, I got to take off the cover over here on the belt and take a look at it from there. But I'm pretty sure that is not supposed to be dragging so hard that it's actually put a gouge in the side panel already, So let's see what's up here. A little further investigation. We are with the belt cover off, and I don't know, this doesn't seem right to me. So looks to me like this piece of shaft sticking out, my guess, is the piece that should be over here filling this bearing race. But, like I said, there's no grub screws there, and there's no screws in the grub holes here. Here's another one here, so I don't think there's anything in here to actually, I don't know about the second one on this end, this bearing. But looks like there's actually nothing in there physically holding that shaft from sliding back and forth at this point. So yeah, that's nice. Oh, look, and if I look down here, we have a similar, let me go on the other side. We have a similar setup over here, but this is nice and tight, and as I thought, it's hitting the end of the bearing pretty much. Yeah, there's just something totally out of whack here. I'm going to have to take that, because this isn't flopping around like this one. Something is just seriously not right here. Off. Look how far this keyway is sticking out. Now, that can't be right. But, yeah, the bolt is pretty well hammered because it was loose, and the washer ran around in circles on it and chewed it all up. And it's a weird fine thread that I probably don't have an extra of, so that's going to be, a trip to the store. Ooh, pardon my French. That's going to be a trip to the store. Oh boy, well now I gotta crack the motor loose so I can loosen up the belt and get this pulley off and have a look around. Pretty well wedged on there, of course. I can't get it off immediately, but this will illustrate. I mean, this thing should turn. I mean, I can barely even. It's not hooked to the motor at all. I'm trying to turn these things like a chore. So, yeah, this has definitely shifted. I mean, there is no way. I bet you $10 this is supposed to be centered in there. I mean, why isn't there a spacer? You know, if they put a metal ring spacer, thrust washer or bearing on each side, maybe. I don't know. This thing could definitely use some improvements. Every 1-month-old piece of power equipment you ever bought, right? Pop the motor off. Looking in here, you can actually see the slide marks. I'll get it here eventually. There we go. But you can see the little striations where it's slid. So, yeah, this pulley's got to come out, but I had to take the motor off because, you know, you can't get a wheel puller or anything in there with the motor in the way, so. Alright. The saga continues. My blood pressure rises. Pulley over here. Anyone else I noticed? There's no Zerk fitting in the bearing. And I mean, this is a covered piece of the engine. I don't think it could have rattled and fallen off. So there's no Zerk over here. And look over here. There's no Zerk there either. What the heck? I don't know. Somebody said they must have built this one on a Friday afternoon when everybody had their head up their butt thinking about fishing. Pulley off now. I don't know what the heck is wrong with this thing, but it is stuck on there. Like, still at this point, even a 3-wheel gear puller isn't working. Or a three-tooth gear puller. So I've actually resorted to my rock tools. I thought about it, and I found a good place where actually it's pretty well supported, where I don't think I'm going to bend the pulley or screw anything up. So I'm using a pair of wedges, top and bottom, between the back flange of the pulley and the front flange of the bearing, and driving space in between them. It's been the only way I've been able to get this thing to move. I mean, you can see I've been using penetrating oil up the wazoo. That thing just was not moving. And, you know, I didn't want to beat the crap out of the end of the axle or pry on the pulley or anything else. So, the technique I've been finding to work so far. It was a new one I invented today. So, just a little, really hard to do one-handed. But you get the general drift. And, you know, I'm going to put the phone down so I can finish this up. But yeah, this is the hardest pulley I've ever had to remove on a new motor. But at least we're starting to make some progress over here. Another 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch. It's still pounding and pounding and pounding. But I can't, I don't know if I can get it in there. But I figured that the keyway must have shifted or anything. But I can stick my face back behind the pulley. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to get you guys back there to see it. Well, maybe I can. Let me turn the motor over here. Or not the chipper. No, that's dragging too much now to turn. But anyways, I thought the keyway was going to be all mangled, and that's why it's been so hard to remove, but it's not. Key is still straight. So, besides the boogers I put on it myself, because I was hoping that grabbing it with a pair of vice grips when it was sticking out like this and wiggling it would kind of jar everything loose a little bit. But no such luck. Nothing is jarring anything loose over here. So, back to it. Hours of screwing around. I've got this thing. Actually, look at how nice that rotates. Doesn't rub on anything. So as I was saying, it was hard to show before, but these J-hooks right here, yeah, we're just dragging right on the side. If you look now, this thing's a lot closer to centered between the two plates. I still wish it would go over a little farther because the shaft doesn't quite fully come out of this bearing, and in my opinion it should. But I think I might have discovered what started all this crap. The nut that goes in here, and again, I would like this to go in a little bit farther. I'm going to work on it a little bit. But this is the nut. And all I did was take out of the shaft here, if it'll focus. And I was showing before how the end was screwed up because it doesn't want to focus on anything but the tire over there. Yeah, let me do it this way. Alright, plan B. Alright, now right up near the head you can see the part of the threads that I said were screwed up, probably from that nut spinning around and around and around. If you look down here, I mean this tip, the tip is screwed up. The bozo at the factory cross-threaded it. See how they're all mashed over? So, that's why it wasn't in all the way. It was tight where it was, and everything else is, when they put this thing together, they stripped out this bolt. So, of course, this is fine thread. I don't have this tap and die here, so I'm going to go and have to go to the big box store and find a stupid tap and die now. And again, there's no grub screws anywhere. I mean, something should be holding this thing from floating back and forth. You know, I don't know what. You know, and to give you an example, I mean, this shaft fits so loosely in the bearing, I can spin the outer race right around the circles, right around the shaft. So, I mean, that's not holding this mechanism from moving in and out of the machine this way at all. That's just a seriously flawed design, in my opinion. Needed of a tap and die to tap out that hole that the factory bungled up. This is how my brandy new used 6 hours DR chipper's looking. And like I said, their customer service was so terrible, and I do know how to fix small engines. I'm not willing to wait 400 years for them to give me a phone number for another shop that is not in existence or something. So I'm going to try and continue on. I'm going to try and fix the design flaws too. Like I said, there's those grub screws in the bearings, and I'm going to put them in, at least on the inner bearing right behind the pulley here. And we'll see what else, but man, not impressed. Well, that's it for today. Check back for day 3 of the saga when I tap out this bolt and hopefully get this thing back together again. Alright, well thanks for watching, guys, and buyer beware.